Flabbergasted by the overwhelming sight and rejuvenating air, I just stood there. That is until I realized how two enormous guards were keeping me out of this paradise. Not feeling remotely like a timid maiden, at least not at this point, I mockingly approached one of the obscenities and dealt with it. After allowing myself to enjoy the warmth, seemingly coming from a furnace inside the clumsy guard, I took care of its poor friend, and finally got the opportunity to appreciate the magnificent nature around me. Feeling insignificant and minuscule compared to the towering Erd tree, I was weighed down by the immensity of it all. Resting on the slightly damp soil covered with fading grass, I contemplated the passing of time. Everything had seen better days in this world, but the decay somehow felt different here, in a kingdom once able to maintain roads and stately monuments. Being overwhelmed by curiosity in the face of such new sensory riches, I summoned Torrent, and together we headed eastward, wanting to make good haste and approach the grand capital. Before long, we arrived at monumental and imposing stairs, apparently protected by hidden marksmen, as well as fierce soldiers dressed in golden attire and showing an eagerness to earn their keep. But I didn't care one bit. Those puny servants wouldn't be able to. What? Was that an arrow in my skull? Suddenly feeling a bit under the weather, fear took hold of me, and I cried out for Torrent to ride like there was no tomorrow. But just as we approached enormous gates at the end of the stairs, two large golden knights on menacing steeds came straight at us. Clearly one wasn't enough. Overcome by pure panic, I darted past them and in despair took a sharp turn to the right, arriving at a nearby camp, which, oh joy, was home of another creature far more infernal than those two suspiciously big-boned knights. Trembling with terror, I quickly grabbed an absurdly heavy weapon from a nearby chest, and then that ghastly thing discovered me. Terrified, I tried to escape once again. This wasn't paradise by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, it was a hellish land in the guise of radiant decay. After miles of humiliating retreat, we reached a lonely and ruinous church, inhabited only by cracked pots. They were long forgotten and overgrown, just like the crumbling walls of this once important place of worship. Standing here, close to the unmountable walls of the capital, I came to the conclusion that its main gate would be an outright nightmare, considering the monstrosities we had just barely survived. I decided to look for another way into this city, something a bit more discreet and befitting an aging gentleman such as myself. For hours, I searched both high and low in the nearby area, glaring into foggy and bottomless pits. Wait, was that a hidden cave entrance? Being this close to the city, that opening had surely been used by rulers in ancient times as an escape route. More importantly, if you could get out of there, you could also get in. We entered what turned out not to be a cave, but rather a mine. Even better. Inside this hollowed-out mountainside, I was puzzled by the absence of tunnels. Yet it wasn't empty, because I could hear workers somewhere close. Would you know it? I had found what was hidden and entered a dusty area with worn-down slaves. After generously freeing them from their tragic fate of servitude and killing their devious, little and filthy guard, I came upon one of those precious and pearl-like artifacts of use to the husky grannies in Round Table Hold. Sadly, it turned out that the mine didn't contain any further secrets, and as I left this disappointingly meager mirage, I was forced to reconsider my initial plan. Wait a moment, who was that? What a peculiar mask. I realized the necessity of more detailed knowledge about this land and grabbed a nearby map. Then, after sneaking past those golden harbingers of doom and riding through a bear-filled ravine, I got hold of the other weathered document and proceeded north. Truth be told, I couldn't help myself at this point. There was something which lured me this way. I ever so briefly palavered with one of the toothless and finger-loving grannies and gave her my best. Coming upon a portal near a broken-down bridge, once crossing the dark forest below, I tried my luck. I now found myself in a landscape adorned with worn-down windmills. Just as I had hoped for, I had gone to the other end of that disintegrated piece of civilization. But who was that lone individual? My inherent longing for friends was once again shattered as I came upon a mummified, long-dead figure. Amusingly, though, he wore an outlandish and somehow familiar mask resembling the sun and pointed up into the sky with that ghoulish hand of his. There it was, the capital with its glorious tree, towering like a sacred monument piercing the very heavens. Yet the pain of my loneliness swept over me. I needed to find a family before venturing any further, and yearned deeply for relief and camaraderie now that Alexander had gone off on his own journey. I descended to another plateau with a muddy path leading west, apparently used by a caravan, and I allowed myself to succumb to a most basic instinct. In the chest, so vigilantly protected by the lowly henchman, I found yet another weapon. Oh, by the gods, so many rare gifts and so little time. Sadly, a safe haven was required before I could study them in greater detail. I had somehow been drawn into the dark forest and now rode through an eerie fog, home to repulsive and worm-like things. Once again, I was reminded that, strictly speaking, you weren't required to get acquainted with every single living creature met along the way. Sometimes it is better not to follow your inclination. As if I hadn't suffered enough already, my wits crumpled, as it turned out this entire forest was littered with the most unappealing beings ever created. Riding in panic, I came upon wandering packs, and was exhausted when I, thank the gods, found a way out of this claustrophobic prison of fog. It was out here, among the autumn trees with leaves forever not fallen, that I saw the great lift of Dectus, and was reminded of an all but forgotten invitation. Feeling despair slowly take hold of me, I searched the area for that glimmer of hope given to me so long ago. And finally, there she was.
I've been waiting for you. I knew you had the stuff of champions. I hereby invite you to the Volcano Manor. Take my hand.
I was about to travel to a civilized place, a stronghold with friends, camaraderie, and best of all, no Gideon or finger-loving grannies. Everything went dark, and I awoke in a warm and luxuriously decorated hall. At the far end, a lady of noble lineage sat, and as I slowly approached her, it became apparent that she was wearing a silvery mask. Finally treated kindly by fate, I rejoiced at my good fortune and spoke to the woman about to welcome me into a family of champions.